All right, we're back. Now, we talked about the Caucasian Mountains and how Caucasian does not, or the Caucasus Mountains and how Caucasian does not mean white, even though a lot of people think it means white. And that just goes to a limited education. So that's why I'm making these videos, so I can bring you up to speed. Now, let's talk about Asian. When we say Asian, we think of people like Chinese, Japanese, slanted eyes, Filipinos, Koreans, whatever. Okay? But again, just like the Caucasus Mountains, that Asian, which we call Mongoloid, is located or related to a geographic location, Asia or Mongolia. Okay, so that's not a biological term. It's a geographic term. Now, the reason we associate it with a biologic term, because typically the people that we see in those places today have that skull morphology or have that genetic identification. So we call them that because they're the ones most commonly found in that place. That's like you going to America and saying, okay, I want to meet some Americans. And then Brad Pitt comes up and you say, okay, well, this is Americans. Americans have blonde hair and blue eyes. But you and I both know that those particular Americans have only been in America for a few hundred years. So that's not an American. That's an American today. And the same thing happens when you deal with Asians. Remember, I said that before 10,000 years ago, the people that we call Asians today did not exist. Okay? They were in the process of evolution. They did not exist. They were black African migrants. The final adaptation that they developed was the lightness of the skin. So we're talking with Asians, it's a little bit older than the Caucasians, but we're still talking between 10 and 15,000 years. Okay, so before 15,000 years, there were no what we call Asian people on the planet. They did not exist. They are a result of development on the tundra and the plains during the Ice Age. So before the Ice Age, there were no Asian people. But there was Asian, more Mongoloid skull morphology, the shape of the skull, and there was Asian DNA, the genetic code. But the people who had this genetic code and this skull morphology were not the people that we call Asians today. If you want to know what those people look like, we've been really fortunate in that there is a group of prehistoric humans who still exist on the planet who demonstrate that Asian genetic code. And those people are called the Andamanese. Now, if you look at an Andamanese person, he looks like a black person, just like you, me, or anybody, if you're black. If you're white, then obviously you don't. But looks just like a black person, and then we would associate that with Africa because we've been taught to associate black with Africa, which is not necessarily true. Everybody comes out of Africa, so you shouldn't just associate black with Africa. You should associate the person with where they're from. In this case, the Andamanese. They're from the Andamanese Islands, which is just off the coast of India. So it's in the Indian Ocean. These are Asiatic people. And their genetic code says that they're Asian. All right, so now if you didn't know any of this and you see a black person with an Asian genetic code, you would think that they somehow have met and bred with Chinese somewhere down the line, and that's how they got the genetic code. But no, these people are linguistically separated from every branch of African by at least 40 to 70,000 years. So that means that these people have developed in isolation and developed what we call the Asian genetic codes and haplogroups in this isolated area. Now, these same type of people didn't just go to the Andamanese Islands. These same type of people went to Northeast Asia. And when they went to Northeast Asia in the human migration out of Africa, remember I told you I think that there were 3 migrations. Well, in one of them, the Asian migration, these people were trapped by the Ice Age glaciation. And these people had to develop and morph and change in order to adapt to these new isolation things. And we're talking about 15, 20, 30,000 years sometimes in the process of developing. The end result is what we see, but we don't see the process that took place to get us to the end result. So when you say Asian today and you see a light-skinned person with slanted eyes and straight jet black hair and short arms and a long torso, we don't understand that all these things were an evolutionary process. And then the parts that we can't physically see, we often discount because we can't physically see it. But you have to understand and realize, and you really don't get this if you just live in America, but if you move out of America, you can see that people have different cultures and different belief systems. We call that a paradigm. If your paradigm is different, your culture is different, then you are a very, very different person at that time. And these changes are a snapshot in what we have today. Stay tuned. This is Key.